Today we are rewinding the clock back to 1988 to spotlight a game that not only captured the essence of a blockbuster film, but also managed to stand out during an era booming with arcade and console hits. We're talking about RoboCop, a game that brought the dystopian future of Detroit right into our living rooms and local arcades. Released at a time when the gaming industry was saturated with both innovative and forgettable titles, RoboCop distinguished itself with its direct ties to the Orion Pictures film released just a year earlier. This wasn't just any tie-in though, it was a part of a larger wave that included merchandise, comics, and even a TV series, all banking on the cybernetic law enforcer. But what made the RoboCop game something more than just another piece of movie memorabilia? What did this game have that captured the attention of gamers and kept it relevant in discussions even today? As we peel back the layers of its pixelated streets and hard-hitting action, we'll uncover not just how RoboCop became a significant title of the late 80s, but also left a lasting impression on the gaming scene. Stay tuned as we explore the nitty-gritty of its creation, the mechanics that drove its gameplay, and the legacy that it cemented in the world of video games. So how did the idea of turning a high-octane action movie like RoboCop into a video game come about? The journey from the big screen to the pixelated scene began when Ocean Software, a company known for grabbing movie titles for video games, snagged the rights to RoboCop. Ocean saw the potential to blend the film's gritty narrative and intense action with the engaging mechanics of a side-scrolling shooter. The development team, led by industry veterans, faced a series of challenges. First and foremost was the task of translating the movie's detailed, futuristic setting and its complex protagonist into something that could run on the hardware of the time. We're talking about platforms like the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and the NES. Machines not exactly known for their powerhouse capabilities. But the team was undeterred. They pushed the boundaries of these systems to create detailed levels that mimicked the grimy, crime-ridden streets of Detroit. Each platform had its own strengths and limitations, which meant that the team had to adapt the game's design accordingly. For instance, the NES version featured more vibrant colors and smoother animations due to its relatively more powerful hardware, compared to the more limited but still impressively executed ZX Spectrum version. The developers also had to be innovative with their programming techniques to incorporate RoboCop's diverse abilities, like targeting specific enemies or using different weapons, which were pivotal to capturing the essence of the film. The results was a game that not only challenged players but also stayed true to the character of RoboCop, who was more than just walking arsenal. They managed to give players a sense of the weight and power of RoboCop with every thudding step and every enemy takedown. This dedication to faithfully adapting the film's elements within the constraints of the 1980s technology paid off, creating a gameplay experience that felt both authentic to RoboCop lore and exciting to the gamer. This balance was critical in setting the game apart from other movie tie-ins of the time, which often missed the mark in capturing the spirit of the source material. Diving into the nitty-gritty of RoboCop's gameplay, we see a game that's all about the rough-and-tumble streets of future Detroit, bringing players into the metallic boots of the titular character. The game combines elements of side-scrolling action with shoot-'em-up sequences that really push the player's reflexes to the limit. The game kicks off with RoboCop patrolling the crime-ridden streets, tasked with stopping crimes and arresting perpetrators, which directly mirrors his on-screen persona as the ultimate law enforcement officer. Players use a variety of weapons like the iconic Auto 9 pistol to neutralize threats. But it's not just about spraying bullets. Ammo is limited, which adds a strategic layer to every encounter. You gotta think like a machine, but act with the precision of a human. Now each version of the game brought its own flavor to these mechanics. For example, the NES version allowed players to collect power-ups and health, adding a bit more depth to the survival aspect of the game. Meanwhile, the arcade version was more about high scores and fast-paced action, reflecting its environment where quick gameplay and turnover are king. One of the standout features across all versions was the targeting system. Unlike many shooters of the time, RoboCop enabled players to aim at specific parts of an enemy's body. Want to disarm a thug without killing him? Aim for the hand. Need to stop a perp in his tracks? A shot to the leg will do. This level of control was a game changer and emphasized the precision shooting that RoboCop was known for. Additionally, the game incorporated various mission types, from rescuing hostages to disarming bombs, which kept the gameplay varied and engaging. It wasn't just about moving from left to right and shooting everything in your way. Players had to approach different scenarios with tactics in mind, which really pulled you into RoboCop's world. Each level built up tougher challenges and culminated in boss fights that required players to use all the skills they had learned. These bosses weren't just bigger and badder, but often required unique strategies to defeat, which added a satisfying layer of complexity to the game. Overall, the gameplay of RoboCop successfully captured the essence of being a cybernetic policeman with both the firepower and the brains to clean up the city, making each player feel like they were part of the movie, enforcing the law in a dystopian future. The game didn't just replicate the film's action sequences, it immersed players in a universe demanding both sharp reflexes and sharper wits. When it comes to the sensory experience of RoboCop, the game really packed a punch with its graphics and sound, setting a benchmark for what movie tie-in games could look and sound like during the late 80s. Starting with the graphics, RoboCop presented a visual treat that was way ahead of many of its contemporaries. The game's artists managed to capture the gritty aesthetic of a crime-ridden Detroit with detailed backgrounds and environments that felt straight out of the film. Each level featured distinct visual themes that matched the areas RoboCop patrolled in the movie. From dingy alleys to corporate fortresses, each rendered with attention to detail that was quite impressive for the hardware limitations. The character sprites, especially RoboCop himself, were another highlight. The design was close to the film's portrayal, with the metallic sheen and mechanical movement that made the character iconic. The animation was fluid for its time, conveying the heavy, deliberate movements of a machine man. Whether it was the recoil of his gun or the way he took down a criminal, the animations added a lot of character and depth to the gameplay. Sound design in RoboCop also did a stellar job of enhancing the atmosphere. The game featured a robust soundtrack that mirrored the film's dramatic tone. The themes were not just background noise, but were integral to the pacing of the game, ramping up during intense fights and toning down during exploratory segments to build tension. Sound effects were equally impactful. The distinct sounds of RoboCop's footsteps, the gunfire, and even the electronic voice effects all contributed to an immersive experience. Each bullet, each robotic footstep echoed the heavy, metallic nature of our protagonist. Interestingly, the soundtracks and effects varied across different platforms. The NES version, for example, used its sound chip to create a more dynamic audio experience, while the Commodore 64's SID chip delivered deep, resonant tones that added a layer of grittiness to the game. These platform-specific capabilities allowed each version to have its own unique auditory signature, which helped tailor the experience to what each system could best deliver. Together, the graphics and sound of RoboCop did not just mimic the movie, but expanded on its world, providing a sensory depth that few other games at the time could match. They were not just ornamental, but were central to the storytelling of the game. Pulling players deeper into the dystopian future with a cybernetic cop is the last hope for justice. The game's ability to use visuals and audio effectively allowed it to stand out in a crowded market and remain memorable to players even decades later. When RoboCop hit the shelves, it quickly became more than just a game. It turned into a cultural phenomenon in the gaming world. The initial reception was overwhelmingly positive, with gamers and critics alike praising how well the game translated the film's atmosphere and action into an engaging interactive experience. Sales figures spoke volumes, the game topping charts across multiple platforms. This wasn't just a flash in the pan though. RoboCop's success was sustained, making it one of the best-selling games of its time. It was a commercial triumph that proved games could do justice to their movie counterparts, and it set a precedent for future licensed video games. Critically, RoboCop was lauded for its fidelity to the source material, something that was not always a given in the world of adaptations. Reviewers highlighted the game's challenging gameplay, detailed graphics, and immersive sound design, noting these elements made RoboCop stand out from the other tie-ins. Gaming magazines of the era, like Nintendo Power and Computer and Video Games, often gave it high scores, celebrating its mix of action and strategy as well as its technological achievements. The game's impact was felt long after its release, influencing a slew of other titles. RoboCop's blend of shooting and platforming mechanics, along with the detailed storyline and strong character development, inspired other developers to take similar approaches. It wasn't just about making a game, it was about creating an experience that players could dive into, something that told a story and built a world. One of the most interesting aspects of RoboCop's cultural impact was its role in defining what a successful movie-to-video game adaptation could look like. At a time when many such adaptations were seen as mere cash grabs, RoboCop stood out as a benchmark of quality. It demonstrated that with careful development and a respect to the source material, games could extend the life of a movie's universe and expand its story in ways that were both respectful to the original and creatively distinct. The game also helped solidify the image of RoboCop as an icon of science fiction. Its portrayal of a cybernetic police officer enforcing law in a dystopian future resonated with fans, reinforcing the character's status not just as a movie hero, but as a staple of the science fiction genre. This broad appeal sparked a range of merchandise, from action figures and apparel to more unconventional items like lunchboxes and bedding, showing how deeply the character had penetrated pop culture. Through its commercial success, critical acclaim, and lasting influence, RoboCop established itself as a landmark title in video game history. It didn't just replicate the success of the film, it built upon it, creating a legacy that would inform the development of licensed video games for years to come. This enduring relevance is a testament to the game's quality and its ability to capture and hold the attention of gamers across generations.
RoboCop.
Alright, so we've navigated the pixelated precincts and dodged the digital bullets to unearth the enduring legacy of RoboCop, the game that proved you can teach an old bot new tricks. From its arcade origins to living room consoles, RoboCop has not just survived the ruthless passage of time, it has thrived, continuing to arrest the attention of gamers with its retro charm and surprisingly deep gameplay. What's the takeaway from our deep dive into this 8-bit enforcer of justice? RoboCop isn't just a relic of a bygone era. It's a masterclass in how to do a movie tie-in done right. It showed us that with the right mix of innovation, respect for source material, and a dash of cybernetic badassery, a game could transcend its promotional roots to become a staple in the gaming community. As we power down our journey through the neon-lit streets of the dystopian Detroit, remember this: RoboCop the game, like the titular hero, serves as a sentinel at the gates of old-school gaming, reminding us that sometimes the old ways and games might just be the best ways. And hey, if you ever feel nostalgic for the days of quarter-munching arcade machines and clunky home consoles, just remember, RoboCop is always on duty, ready to serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the awesome. Game on, folks. Game on. If you enjoyed exploring the history and making of RoboCop, click this video here to see more from the Retro Reload. And, as always, thank you for watching.